project for the healing and wellness of Black same-gender loving men. And today is the second episode in this project. And in today's episode, we really wanted to dive into talking about the dangers of constantly seeking external approval as a Black same-gender loving man. Last episode, we went in on our pilot episode. We talked a lot about what are some of the traumas that we experience as Black gay men growing up as little Black gay children, and what we had learned about how to start to heal those traumas and what we've seen in our lives since that. And we want to continue that conversation and just dive right in around like what actually happens when we move through the world constantly seeking other people, trying to see us, trying to say we're okay, trying to give us a green light on our existence, trying to really just make us accept us or make us belong. And what happens when we kind of reverse that? And we're going to talk a little bit about what we found in our own journeys around that, and then what we see in our community as a whole. So if you're new to this, my name is Jerome Braggs. I am an intuitive healer. I help spiritual seekers heal their lives and their bodies and experience more delicious levels of well-being. And I am also a Black same-gender loving man. I have been exclusively same-gender loving for about 20 years now. And I had gone through a whole world of wounds and traumas around that, but also a whole world of healing and transformation around that. And I wanted this project to be a space where we don't just talk about what the wounds and the traumas are, but we really share the healing. Like, what is the process to really heal? What are the tools that you need to really heal? And what does life look like on the outside of healing? You know, I think we have there's this belief that, especially in healing and spiritual circles, that healing is always an ongoing process. And I don't actually aspire to that. My own journey has taught me that there is an outcome to your healing journey. There is an ending point. Now, there may be something else to heal, once you get there, but the healing doesn't take, you're not going to always be in the wound and always trying to heal it for the rest of your life. It is absolutely possible to heal the wounds that we have, both emotional wounds, our spiritual wounds, our mental wounds. It is possible to heal those and have a well experience in that area, to have a well life. Whether your healing is around, your relationship with your parents, whether your healing is around your relationship with your sexuality, whether your healing is around your body, whether your healing is around your finances, it's possible for that to be healed and well, and for you to go to another level of experience with that. And that is what we really want to talk about, the things we're learning about healing, the things we have healed, and sharing how we did that and what life looks like on the other side. But this is the place for Black same-gender loving men to really have the raw, transparent conversations for well-being. So took them all that intro time, my brother. Sorry about that. So I want to introduce my brother, Donnell, who is also the co-founder of this project.
You prior to the live starting, I told you that I was feeling tender, and I realized I needed you to take all that time to help me get into another place, because I feel much better now. I feel much better now. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Donnie Hill, and I too am a spiritual guide and healer. And I'm really focused on what it means to live a joyful life as a Black same-gender loving man. And because of the journey that I've taken and that Jerome's taken and that so many of our Black same-gender loving brothers and sisters have taken, it's really an honor to help facilitate this conversation, because not only is it needed right now for our own well-being, but with everything that's happening across the country and around the world, like, this really is the emergence of Black gay joy and the emancipation of the Black gay soul. And so this means so much to me because I'm thinking about my journey that I've taken over the course of my lifetime, from one of suicide and depression to where I am now. And if I were to go back to my 19 or 20-year-old self, I never expected to make it this far. So the fact that I'm here now at 33 and having this conversation and doing this project with Jerome, is, I know that you can have a much different experience, and that there's so much juiciness on the other side.
Yeah, I want to take a moment, like everybody watch, like whether you're watching live or whether you're watching it replay, I want to take a moment because you said something. And I want to sit, like, I literally want us to take a moment and breathe and not speak for like 15 seconds and let this land. We are in a moment right now where we are witnessing and contributing to and influencing the emancipation of the Black soul. And I don't want us to skirt over, like, I know we had this whole topic, but I want to start here. But like,
do we need to throw it out the window?
I don't know if we need to throw it out the window, but I think we might need to like maybe table it for a second, because what does it even mean? Like, as I sit with that, and I know in the last episode we really like had some real emotional moments, and I'm about to have another one, because we are literally the emancipation of the Black soul. And I want to talk about, like, because I know as a Black gay soul, there were so many spaces in me growing up that weren't emancipated, that were not liberated, and that there was no place that I knew. You know, you're 33, I'm 41, right? That when I grew up, I didn't know of a place where I could go that they had the tools to say, here's how you liberate yourself.
Yeah.
Or that liberation, even getting even more serious about it, I never saw, and I'm not saying that they weren't there, but they definitely weren't in mass numbers. I never saw a liberated Black same-gender loving man, a liberated Black gay soul, until I was an adult. And as a matter of fact, this is a perfect time we're doing this today, because just yesterday they had a memorial service via Zoom for someone, or a mentor of mine, who was actually one of the first liberated Black gay souls I ever knew, Dr. Ron Simmons. I worked at his organization, helping us straight out of college. And he was the CEO and founder of that. I had never known Black gay men, owning companies or being CEOs or founders of companies. And he was very in his body and very in his sexuality, and there was no fear around it and no shame around it. And again, the liberation. So what I want to do is I want to talk about, like, what does emancipation mean to you as a Black same-gender loving man? What does emancipation mean to you? And I'm gonna throw that question out to you first, since you're right here. I'm gonna throw that question to you, and then I'm gonna swing back and I'm gonna answer it too, but I'm gonna throw it to you.
It's funny. I didn't start thinking about it until you used the expression "giving yourself the green light," and I just got this visual of, I've been pushing the brake for a really, really long time. And I realized nobody can take my foot off the brake except me. And so for me, I think part of the emancipation is saying what I wanted me to say. Part of the emancipation is not apologizing for my Blackness, not apologizing for my gayness. And that doesn't mean that I don't have a fear when I walk into certain spaces, but it's the recognition of the fact that I have choice. So I can either choose to say something or I can choose not to say something. And that is a much more empowering place than I've ever been before. And even now, as I think about it, I'm like, oh shit, what's going to happen if I just show up as myself? Because I don't know how people are going to respond, and there's that in itself can raise up a whole bunch of things. But I think it's me realizing that I can make a choice in every moment that gives me, that helps me define what emancipation means for me. It's like, oh yeah, I can say yes in this moment, I can say yes in the next moment, I can say yes in the next moment, or I can choose to say no, and that's freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, emancipation for me is, again, it's freedom, it's liberation. As you're saying, when I heard you say that word, those were the words that came, like freedom and liberation. And when I think about liberation for myself, what it really means to me is that there is nothing suppressed. There's nothing in bondage. There's nothing in bondage, right? So there is no place in me that is imprisoned or embonded in any form. And so that means there's no aspect of who I am as a person, like who I am and my identity as a same gender loving person, that I'm suppressing or hiding or trying to edit or rearrange. There's no space of who I am as a Black soul, right, in this space that I'm trying to suppress or hide or rearrange or, change in any type of way. And it also comes, and the reason why I do those things, why I had done any suppression or hiding or rearranging, or where any aspect of my being was in bondage, whether that was when I was on the DL in my 20s, whether that was when I didn't say what I really wanted to say, I didn't express my beliefs, whether it was in a space of all white people or whether it was a space of all heterosexual people, or whether it was a space where, of church people and I had different spiritual beliefs, or whether it was, whether I'm not really writing about what I really wanted to write about because I didn't want to seem too woo-woo, or whatever this was, right, where I suppressed aspects of myself, or also, my sexuality, whether I wanted to be more masculine presenting or feminine presenting in a moment, right? So all these aspects of my identity, whether I want to be in this space and am I suppressing, like I want to use ebonics in here, or am I trying to present a more professional, acceptable aspect of myself in this space? And so emancipation to me means nothing suppressed, nothing in bondage, and that I am free to live my unedited, unabashed truth on all the spaces that it resides in, right? So when I hear that, like, and again, like it reminds me of how I lived for so long not being free. And I think it reminds me of our initial reason we wanted to have this conversation today. It was like, we wait for so long for somebody else to give the key to unlock that cage. But you realize the real transformation comes when you realize the only person who had the key, the only person who could ever have it is you. And that's kind of what I want to talk about now, is like, what are the places where we imprison ourselves as Black same gender loving men, and what are the keys to unlock those doors, to unlock those bars so that we can be emancipated. Because I'm gonna tell you this, it's not gonna come with these systems. I don't care what, like, they can do all the changes. We thought it was gonna come with gay marriage. It's still a lot of us not free. It's still a lot of us not speaking our truth, not living our truth. It's still a lot of us suppressing and hiding and changing and rearranging aspects of ourselves. So it's not a systems change. It's gonna have to be something else. And yeah, I think I wanna dive in around like, where have we been in bondage? What were some of the top 3 areas where you were imprisoned, and what is your relationship with those, and what did you do to free yourself, or what are you doing now to try and free yourself?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a work in progress. One of the pieces that came to mind just as you were sharing was around what professional looks like. And realizing that I need to rearrange myself because I went to a predominantly white school where we wore blazers and ties and it was polished, when what I really wanted to wear was some jeans and a t-shirt. And why doesn't that read as professional, or why do I define that as not professional? And so I'm realizing that a lot of my definitions now are changing, which in itself is crazy making, because I'm like, okay, well, it's not that, but I don't know what this new thing is over there. So I'm doing all of this testing and seeing how people respond. But even in me waiting for some kind of response, I realize, oh, I'm still imprisoned because I'm waiting for them to say, yes, that's okay. And so in the workplace, I would say that's one area. Another place.
Let's stay there.
Okay.
Because this is a big one. Because it's huge, right? So I think that this whole thing about what is professional is really a supremacist thought. It is really a supremacist thought because because again, it's deemed off of really what the white male is, and not even like what anybody else is, like what the white male is and what the white male accepts, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is because this is something that not only it probably affects almost everybody listening out here who is Black and same gender loving, or Black period, right? And all the narratives we get as Black youth growing up around what is acceptable for you to present yourself to other people in professional settings, and what those messages do, they trip. I remember we were at Morehouse when I was at Morehouse College, and one of the big departments in the Morehouse was the business department. They had the most funding. A lot of them people that came through the business department were highly successful, and Morehouse was this HBCU for Black men. And it was very, it was touted as, this is where the leaders come from, this is where it comes from. But I remember there was this big thing that was happening when I was in school there, where they were telling some of the men that they had to cut their hair. They couldn't have locks, they had to cut their hair. And that this wasn't, that you couldn't be professional. And this was a huge thing where the students were starting to push back and saying, this isn't the narrative is, I'm not enough as I am, and I need to meet whiteness to be enough.
Yeah.
And that is really this big narrative so much in Black culture, right? So you get it. So if you're Black same gender loving, you get it in Black for your Blackness, right? So there's certain aspects that you need to speak like this, you need to do all this, and this is the narratives that you get in order to be okay. And then you add in that you're gay. What you better not do is be too feminine here. So then you're policing yourself. So you're policing the aspects of your Blackness. And then you start policing the aspects of your masculinity or your femininity, because you better not be too feminine here, because then you definitely not, either you're not gonna get the job, or you're gonna be teased, or you're going to fight. And so it's these spaces where, again, you get imprisoned in what the real you, because that's all great and good if the natural part of you, if that's your expression, right? Like I'm bald now because baby, I'm balding. I don't have like I can't. Now listen, I've had all of it. I've had a fro, I've had cornrows, I've had twists, I had all that when I had hair, and even and even then, if some of my friends watching, y'all know, even then I was holding on the bare end because when I had those twists, baby, they was barely. One of my friends used to say, you don't have twists, you got whisked. Because they are in the wind, baby. So. But anyway, like, you know, I'm bald now, not because I'm trying to be professional, but because I just don't like, I don't have the hair, so I think I look sexy bald, so I cut my hair so that I can't do what I want to do. But there's these messages and these narratives that your natural expression isn't there, and it imprisons you.
Mm.
It puts you in a prison when you buy into these narratives and you buy into these things. And, you know, we were talking about this kind of healing thing. One of the things that I did, that I knew that I could not, like, I knew that I wanted all of the rules and all of the, especially in 9 to 5s, all of the rules, all of the, and like you, I grew up with a lot of rules. I went to a private school as well, where we had to wear a uniform every day, right? You couldn't wear just jeans. We could only wear jeans, I think, on Fridays. And that was once you got to high school. Other than that, like, we had a strict uniform. You had to wear it all the time. And what it had, when I was coming into my adulthood, what I began to know was that I wanted to experience freedom, what it really meant. And I knew for me that meant that I was going to have to work for myself. But here's the other thing. Just because I began to work for myself doesn't mean that those messages weren't in my subconscious. They were in my subconscious, and they were operating, right? So, you know, in the beginning of my work, I would be all professed. I'd look all this way. And here I am talking about, you know, I'm on the woo end of things. So I'm talking about spirit and chakras and healing and all, and guides, spirit guides and all that. And here I am in like a blazer and, and all of that because of how deep the conditioning went in me, that you're Black, you're already, and then the other part of the conditioning is you're already on the lower part. You're going to have to work 5 times as hard as them anyway, so don't add anything else to you. And again, it's all this pressure and all this bondage suppressing the natural expression of your true soul. And so I had to work for myself so that I could let my soul come out. So that I could wear t-shirts and I could wear jewelry and I could wear jeans. And one thing I learned in this process, and as we're talking about the healing of it, when I began to let go of some of those narratives of you have to fit this certain box in order to, because what it's saying is you have to fit this way in order to be acceptable.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, if you're not clean shaven as a Black man, if you don't speak eloquently with English as a Black man, if you're not masculine presenting all the time as a Black man, then you are not acceptable and you won't belong. And when I began to really unpack those and take those off of my body and just show up as myself. And if anybody who's worked with me, you know, I use Black gay vernacular sometimes. I kiki. When I'm on stage, I wear whatever I want to wear. I may wear a t-shirt and jean when I'm speaking on stage. I may wear a suit and tie if I feel like it. But I am myself. There is not a mask that I'm wearing anymore. There is not a prescription of like what I should be that I present anymore. I'm me. And when I finally did that, and by the way, it took me a lot of healing work to be able to get all those messages and all that fear, because what ends up happening when you get those messages, you have fear that if you don't do that, everything's going to be taken away. Everything's going to be taken away. And when I finally began to do that, I felt I felt free, like what it actually means to feel what it actually, and one thing I really understand now is freedom cannot exist without your truth. It doesn't happen. It does. If you're not fully in your truth, if you're not fully expressing your true identity, your personality, if you're not, it just doesn't, it doesn't come. It doesn't exist. And then the other thing that I learned, Donnell, around this was like, the more I did that, the more I just presented myself how I am, the more success came to me. And the more I realized people don't care. People really just want you to be you and for you to know what you're talking about. As long as you know what you're talking about, and you present yourself, they love it. They're here for it. They will sit and pay whatever. I mean, think about, and see, here's the other messages again. Think about how damning these messages are for Black people. Here we are, and if there's white families, white souls watching right now, they may have no clue about this, but if you're a Black soul, you know how many times you get the message of you need to present and be on your P's and Q's. Your stuff needs to be ironed out. It needs to be right. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. And I just remember the paradigm, like shattering experience that happened when when I used to see Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple, the one who passed a few years ago, when I used to see Steve Jobs get up there with his black dingy turtleneck and his no-name jeans that looked like he had worn them for 6 days straight and speak to this thousands of audience that paid like $1,500 a ticket. And here I was thinking I couldn't dare do that, right? And I think that's the kind of dichotomy that happens when you're a Black person in America, and especially as a Black gay person, is here are these other people like being the full freedom of themselves, being emancipated in their full being. And here you are thinking that in order to share that same stage, you can't be emancipated. You have to be in chains.
Yeah. When you started talking about your experience growing up and in schools, and I'm seeing this for myself as I navigate my own entrepreneurial journey, because I feel like I'm starting to take off some of the chains. But what I kept thinking about is nobody really gets to know me when I'm trying to put on all these layers. And so not only is it confining me and restricting me, there's also this level of truth that people don't know and don't get to experience, because there's this belief of, the only way you're going to be able to interact with me, or the only way you're going to be able to accept me, is if I have on these chains. And as you were talking, I wanted to start taking off my shirt because I got a T-shirt on under here, but I'll save that for another live. But it was this beautiful reminder that my appearance has nothing to do with my value.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm having, part of the reason why I'm quiet or at a loss for words is because I'm just having an epiphany of my own. and just so people know, this is usually how our conversations go when we're not on live too, where we just have these moments of, you just touched every piece of my being. So I just need to be in every piece of my being right now.
Oh, well, while you process that, I'm gonna throw something else out, because that you touched with what you were saying. And you said something that it just broke my heart open, because it reminded me of this other piece that I learned in my journey, and I'm still learning in my journey of trying to liberate myself. And that you said that when we have all these masks that we have to wear, we have all these rules, nobody really gets to know us because we're never our real selves in the world. And I want to share this other piece too, because this is what happens when we suppress ourselves, or when we hide aspects of ourselves, or we're rearranging and we never present the fullness of ourselves. We don't ever get really loved. No one can really love us, the real us, because we're never the real us. And so we never move through our lives. And this is so true for my Black gay brothers, because I see it so often, and I've lived it, so I know it. How often we move through the world wanting to be loved and not realizing the key to that love is presenting the world with our whole self. And it's not our fault why we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to do that. For most Black gay men, we haven't been taught how to do that. And that usually, like it was for me, it comes through some massive spiritual awakening or massive spiritual healing, where you have to really learn how to remove those lies and then begin to present the world with your true self. And what I have found is that the more and more I bring myself out, whether the more and more I just be as raw and as authentically real in my work as possible, as raw, as authentically real as in my family as possible, in my relationships as possible, the more people show up and deeply love me. Now, not everybody, right? Because some people are not going to be able to handle your truth, especially when what you've been giving them was another version. When they've gotten used to another version, and then you finally do the work to present your truth, that they may not have been here for that. They might not have signed up for the real you. They signed up for the lie, and they need to go, right? But what you find out is when you present the real you on that plate, people will show up who want to taste that, and they think it's delicious, and they will love you in a way you think that you're being loved, and you think you're being approved of and belonged by putting these masks on, by putting these things on, all this. But what you find out when you be your full self, your real self, and when people show up, that's real love, because that's unconditional. And what I think, and I'm about to say something, I never thought about it until right now. It just landed. I think the majority of Black, same gender loving men don't know unconditional love. They only know conditional love. We only, because that's the world we moved in. That was the world we grew up in. And we weren't taught how to be unconditionally loved.
Yeah. What just came up when you shared that, as I think about my own experience, what I realized is I wanted to belong so much and tried so desperately to avoid feeling lonely that it was like, all right, I will make this mask acceptable. When in the back of my mind, I always knew, oh, but this still feels really, really empty. And now I'm getting to practice genuinely loving myself and understanding what that means. And, part of what we wanted to talk about in this conversation is how do you make your way to that journey from constantly seeking external validation to what I'm calling internal appreciation, And it has been a very slow process for me. And it's also been a very painful process because as I remove the layers, I'm realizing just all of the areas where I haven't unconditionally loved myself, or I haven't truly loved myself. And I've created a lie around my love for myself in order to think that I was okay. That's like, okay, I'm tired of lying now. That doesn't feel good. And so there's this period of grief and sadness. And you shared with me maybe 2 years ago that one of your friends was with us, and she said, Donnie seems like a lovely person, but he seems really, really sad.
Mm.
And since you told me that, it's always stuck with me because it's true. There's this deep level of sadness and grief that I'm realizing I'm still processing because I spent so much of my life not being honest with myself about how I felt about myself and not knowing how to talk about it or articulate it. And then when I would go and try and get it from my friends and my family or my partners, then it always fell flat because it wasn't coming from me.
Thank you. You're reminding me of like, it's almost like the rite of passage for the Black gay soul. You know, I remember when I first realized that I was attracted to the same gender. I was 5 years old, and I shared this in the last video, so I won't go in detail here. But in that exact moment that I realized that, I knew it in the air that it wasn't okay, that it wasn't going to be okay in the world. And from that moment, I became, from 5 years old, I became a master at hiding. I became a master at lying. I became a master of living in a prison box, of presenting another version of me that wasn't the real me in order to stay safe, because I didn't want my parents to find out and you know, be mad at me or reject me or spank me or punish me. I didn't want, you know, the kids at school, I didn't want to have to fight every day. And so I knew I was attracted to both genders at that time. So I hid. And I think there's something that happens when you are a Black gay child. You become a master at hiding. And what you don't realize you're doing at the same time is you become a master at being a prisoner in your own life. And you don't, and so there's constant beliefs and constant feelings where you don't, and this is something even now, like I've done so much healing work and there's still stuff coming up where I have to really check myself for being like, you know, I'll be going somewhere and I'm getting ready to wear something and I'll hear a small voice be like, don't put that back, don't wear that, that's too much. And then I have to like sit and be like, where'd that come from? This is something I really wanted to wear, why is this too much? Right? And I have to sit in all the messages of you're not okay as you are. It's not safe to fully express the real you. And something about you is too much, it's wrong. It's too much, or it's too little, or something. And so in order for you to be okay in this world, you have to add to yourself, or you have to take away from yourself, always. Always. So whether that's I'm adding to my masculinity or taking away from my femininity, or I'm trying to add to my body, I'm always in the gym, or whatever it is. But and again, this is not like, and I'm speaking, we're both sharing our stories, but these are universal in our culture, where you grow up. I don't know a Black gay child, and I've this younger generation, there's more of them coming here But I don't know of one in my generation or the generations before me who grew up knowing that the full expression of himself was allowed and lovable.
Mhm.
It was allowed and lovable, and it was safe. I don't know one. And that's like the messages. And so if you grow up and think about what that does to us, growing up in this world, thinking that there are pieces and parts of you that are not allowed, pieces and parts of you that are not lovable, pieces and parts of you that are not safe. Imagine the type of contortions and absolute ninja work you will do on yourself to try and get love. Or this is another thing that's under, when you don't have internal acceptance, you weren't taught how to do it, and you weren't taught that you even deserved it. You weren't taught internal acceptance, and you weren't taught internal trust. You will move through your life, your entire life, seeking it externally. So you will seek external acceptance. And the thing about that is you will go to any means to get it. Any means. You will betray yourself to get it. You will do detrimental things to your health to get it. You will do horrendous things. The most horrendous things in our lives come out of the feeling of not being enough. We make horrendous decisions from that feeling. And that is where most of us exist in. And because one, we were taught not that we weren't enough. Our culture said it, our society said it, a lot of our families said it. And then where do we get the tool? Where growing up as a Black, same gender person, did you get the tools to learn how to feel in every part of your being, in every piece of you, was enough and lovable and allowed and safe? Where did you get, if y'all are out there watching, I need you to tell me where growing up you got that. And I think that's because I know for me that was not, I spent, 30 years since being that 5-year-old kid in the bed having that aha moment that I was attracted to. I spent at least 30 years in feeling that I wasn't enough and that I wasn't safe, and that the only way I would be enough and the only way I would be safe is if I was different. And I went to contorting all aspects of myself and present. And I remember it was almost it took me probably 40 years to be able to be comfortable hearing my voice played back. Mm-hmm. Because when I was a young kid, I had a very high voice and I was mistaken for a girl a lot. And I was teased for that a lot. And so that message again was my voice is not enough. And I literally think my soul was like, baby, you are so scared. We're gonna have to drop your voice down in puberty a lot to try and help you out. Because I don't sound anything like what I used to sound like a very high-pitched girl. And but when I hear my voice and I hear any femininity back in it, right? And there's the old wound that will come up of, oh shit. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of self-talk and a lot of self-talking myself down from a ledge, right? Like, mm-hmm. It's okay, your voice is beautiful. It doesn't have to be all these things I have to remind myself of, because I wasn't taught that my voice was okay. I wasn't taught my skin color was okay. I wasn't taught my sexuality was okay. And I had some feminine tendencies growing up. I wasn't taught that was okay. And God, where do you hear like someone taking your face in their hands and saying, you're beautiful and all of you is okay. And all of it belongs here. All of it belongs here. Instead of only these pieces belong. Only this masculine piece of you belongs over here. Only this thin piece, like the don't be too fat now. That doesn't belong either. Only this piece, only this, you need to speak like this. Don't speak over here. You're constantly picking little pieces of our soul out and saying, only these pieces of your soul belong. And the healing is learning that every part of your soul belong, every part. And you'll only be emancipated when all the pieces of them belong again. You'll only be emancipated then.
Yeah, you and I have talked a lot about voice stuff, because when I was 19, I was diagnosed with a neurological voice disorder. And at the time, a big part of it came because of my struggling with my sexuality and depression and a whole bunch of stuff. But there was a period of 4 or 5 months where I couldn't talk at all. And so every time I tried to talk, it sounded like someone was strangling me. And when it first happened, I used to have to get Botox injections into my vocal cords in order for the muscles to relax. And it wasn't until you and I got connected and I really started to think differently about the messaging and the opportunity for me and my voice disorder. And it was really around, you're so scared to say what you just want and need to say. You're terrified. And I haven't gotten injections in 8 or 9 years, but part of it has been, one, they hurt, and and the other is I've really been taking this as an opportunity to reconnect with myself and look at, where am I still not saying the things that I need to say, and what's here for me to learn, and how can I continue to come back to myself and heal myself and share more of my truth. And I love that you helped me come to that perspective, because otherwise I would have been trying to find all of these external fixes to help me do internal work. And although it provided some temporary relief, it didn't change the emotional pain.
Yeah. I think that's our bodies, and we'll be talking about this definitely in this series, but our bodies, they love us so much. And oftentimes what we think are punishments or betrayals by our bodies and illnesses and things are really our bodies trying to protect us. And when we can get to the root of what it is that it's trying to protect us from, a lot of times that's the key to our healing. And for so many of us having, voice problems, is because we weren't taught that it was safe to say what we need to say what we really wanted to say. As
a Black person or a gay person.
Again, where? Like, I need y'all to raise your hands and be like, it was me, because we need to talk to you. Because where, as a Black person, did you grow up knowing that you can say whatever you needed to say in any situation? I remember, think about this, how many kids, and if it wasn't you, it was your cousins or somebody, you heard it, like, think how many people Black folks you would see in the grocery store, and their mother would be like, don't you act up in here in front of these good white folks. Don't you say that out here in front of these white folks. Wait till we get back to the car. Right, wait till we get back to this car. I'm about to tell you. Or you got towed up right there at the store. And so especially as a male child, because for our parents in their generation, Black men speaking out got killed.
Mm-hmm.
They literally got killed. Like a black man, if he was too mouthy and he was too confrontational with white people, he would get lynched sometime. He would get taken away in the middle of the night. His house would get burned down. This was real for them. So they taught their children, which was us, you need to be the quiet, nice black boy, because that's how you're going to live. That's how you're going to survive. And that's great for us as kids, but when we get adults, what it ends up happening is we don't even know how to stand our ground. We don't know how to really say no, especially to authority. We don't know how to speak, and it's a learning curve, and it's hard if you don't get the tools. It's a hard-ass learning curve if you don't have the tools. And so you got that as a black man, and as a gay person, you best not say it. Your neck better not roll too hard. You better keep your hands together. You better not snap and pop. You better keep it together, right? And so, it's all these places where you are snipping pieces of your soul, and you're putting these boxes and these bars around your being, around your truth, and your truth never sees the light of the day. And emancipation, going back to this whole thing, emancipation is we got to take those bars and to burn them to the ground and let our truth live fully out. And I remember for me that meant some things like allowing myself to be more feminine and to really embrace that. And there was another, again, feminine was not okay. It was not acceptable, and it wasn't attractive. So I had all these messages. So I wouldn't want to be too feminine in public, because also that dude over there won't like me. Or, I wouldn't get this job and all that. And so that was a part of my being that I remember a friend of mine a few years ago. And the thing about it is, your soul is going to keep bringing you the help you need, because I was always, the friends that I always got, the ones that were in my inner circle, they were always flamboyant. They were on the fishy, cunty scale of gayness, right? And I remember this one friend I had, and we did similar work, and he was very, reality shows were calling him to be on all this. And he had this thing, like he said, you're going to have to liberate your fish. You're going to have to liberate and feel your fishy. And so he gave me this, I'm trying to think what it's called, but it's like this lingerie, fishy ass, feminine ass thing. And whenever you need to feel your femininity, put it on, wear it around the house, wear it, and just do it. And I will do that. Like, I will wear this, like, I'm trying to think what it's called, but it's not like a nightgown, but it's like something like that. It's like leopard and like this, it's silk and just real fish. And whenever I want to feel feminine, I'll put it on. And I remind myself that it is okay to have this experience, right? That's not something that I am. My natural way of being is like, I'm not actually interested in wearing women's clothing, but when I really want to be balanced and allow myself to say it is okay to have the expressions of femininity that you have, I'll put that on. And it's little things like that begin to chip away at those bonding and imprisoning messages. It could be the simplest thing. As I have another friend, I have the story on this because it's really important, because there's so many of you all I know that resonate with this. I had a friend who, this was many years ago, and he was fascinated with women's shoes, fascinated. Then the majority of his life, he was masculine presenting, acting and all of that. But he had this fascination with women's shoes. And I would say you need to just buy some and wear some around the house, because you just, and so much so that, when we suppress aspects of us, they come out in ways that you wouldn't expect. You think you keeping it together, but so I remember we were at, it happens all the time. You think you keeping it together when you suppress something, but it comes out. And so we were at we had gone to his cousin's house. He had this cousin that was a woman. She was a little bit older than us. She was married. She had this fabulous house. And we had gone in Vegas. And we had gone to her house. She had invited us over there. We had taken this trip to Vegas together. And she had invited us over to her house. And so we went over to her house and she was showing us her house, like, you know, viewing the house. And we walked she showed us her closet. She had this huge walk-in closet. It's a beautiful little house in this gated community and all this. So she had this huge walk-in closet. So we walk into this closet and he squealed out loud and didn't know that he had squealed out loud and ran over to these high heel shoes that she had over there. And she was like, look at these shoes. And I was sitting in the corner like, you don't even know what you're doing right now. Like, you are full on, like punk, sissy, punk. You are full on all of that in the stereotype. You are full on in this right now. You don't even know that that's, but again, he had been suppressing it for so long, and he would never go to the store and buy them because he didn't want anybody to see him buy them. And he didn't want anybody to come to his house and like come across them and see them by accident or something. And again, it's all these ways we bond ourselves in this. But you could see in this moment how passionate this was, how important this was for him. He was enthralled. And to me, I was like, they all right. Like, to him, this was life. And this is like, again, the suppression, the imprisonment we have of all these aspects of ourselves that we don't let see the light. And the smallest thing could set your soul freer. Had he just bought those shoes and walked around the house, he would have probably been the happiest person in the world.
You talk about healing happening in the moment. I don't remember whether or not I shared this story with you. I know I've shared it with very few people, and part of it was the shame around it. So for me, I knew I was same gender loving when I was 2 or 3. And my sister used to do ballet. And so she had this big box of tutus. And I remember I must have been 2 because we were living in my first house. And I went into the box of tutus and I put one on. And I'd twirl around and spin. And I remember my mom called my name. And I was terrified. And she was downstairs and I was upstairs in my room. But I was terrified. Like I could feel myself freeze.
All right, wait a minute. Come on, upstairs bedroom, child. Come on, upstairs bedroom. Come on, fancy. Come on, 2-year-old private bedroom upstairs.
So I took it off and put it back in the box and pushed it into the closet because I just heard her name and was like, oh, something in me said this isn't right. And as I got a little older, maybe 5 or 6, my dad used to take me to these high school football games. And he would want to go watch the football games, and I would want to go watch the cheerleaders. And they'd go do their thing and do their dance. And I'd come back home and put a little towel on my head or a shirt on my head and do my dance. And for me, my story to them was always, oh, I'm playing a superhero. When it's like, no, I wanted to feel my fish. But it wasn't until you just started telling that story where I realized I disconnected with my divine feminine, when every human being has a divine feminine and divine masculine. And I think not only as same gender loving men, but particularly as Black men, we're conditioned to dismiss the feminine aspects of ourselves. And it's also the piece that we most need to integrate in order for us to have that balance. And so for me, it was never even though I still want to meet RuPaul. So RuPaul, again, if you hear this, we're waiting on the conversation.
Definitely.
But it's not that I want to wear women's clothes, but I wanted to integrate that part of myself because it's a very nurturing part and it's a very loving part. And it also helps me stay balanced. So as I'm interacting with people, I can bring both the masculine and the feminine and help people see, all right, I can have a compassion for you and be deeply connected with you emotionally, but I can also help you solve problems and move things and build. And I think that is for me, that's part of the liberation, is being able to embody and embrace both when I need them.
I love that you brought the feminine aspect and the divine feminine, because again, we have both. And so when we're taught to, especially black men period, are so taught to, you really highlighted it. We are taught to divorce ourselves from anything feminine whatsoever and reject that aspect, and not understanding we're actually rejecting pieces of ourselves. And when we reject and divorce from pieces of ourselves, we'll never be whole. We'll never have wholeness. And so it's no wonder why black men have so many health issues, and no wonder why black same gender loving men have so many health issues, because we're not whole. We're not even moving through the world in our wholeness and taught how to do that, right? And the other part of like the feminine aspect is the divine feminine. Is the part of you that is where your creativity lies, is where your receiving lies. Your trust lies, trust in the universe, trust in yourself, but you're receiving. So this is another reason why black men are so exhausted, because we are so do, and because we've been divorced from the part of ourselves that says, I deserve to receive, and that life loves me already, and that it wants to give to me. We're so caught up in trying to make life be good to us, because we were never taught to embrace the part of us that knows that life already wants to be good to us. And that's where the feminine aspect of our being is. And that's the part that I think, this is just beautiful that you brought this up, because we're such, I'm going to say this, and I'm just going to say it because it's the truth. We're so sick. We're really sick. And we're sick because we have been made to literally cut off whole chunks of our being and put them in cages and saying, you better not come out, because if you come out, we won't get money, we won't get the men, we won't get the partner. And so we're these bifurcated, separated, disjointed beings moving through the world looking for well-being, and not knowing that well-being requires us to go and unleash that cage and bring all of it and welcome it like that. And that's the it makes me sad, because I know that journey. If you don't know that journey, right? If you don't know what it means to have to cut whole chunks of yourself off and put them in a cage in order to think that you deserve to walk around in the world, just to walk around in it, not even to just to walk down the street in the world, you think you have to cut a piece of yourself off. That's the wound.
Yeah.
That's the wound.
When you when you think about your journey to wellness, how did you begin the journey, or what would you say has been one of the biggest keys to your journey back to wholeness or your journey back to wellness?
I'm going to say this, and this is I really think this is one of the biggest keys. No more fucking secrets. That there is nothing in my being that I'm hiding. That I live honestly, that I live authentically, and that I live transparently. And I know for my other brothers hearing this, because I know it was for me before I took this journey, hearing that sounds like a death sentence. Because everything in our being has told us that if you did that, you lose everything. And it basically is almost like you die. That is how I used to, that's how I used to live. That's how I was. That the belief that there were parts of my being that I could bring out into the light, that didn't exist. I was like, no, that's always going to stay in the shadows, because if I brought that to the light, I lose everything. I lose my work, I lose my family, I lose love, people won't be attracted to me. But what I've learned is when I do, there's no part of my being that is too ugly that it doesn't belong in the light. And what I've learned is every aspect of my being belongs in the light. And because only when I bring every aspect of my being to the light did I start to discover how lovable I actually am, as is. Not I was lovable when I got that six pack. Not I'm lovable when I got that six figures in the bank account. Not lovable when I became more masculine or more femme or whatever, but I'm lovable right here as I am, with all that I have or don't have, with all that I express how I am or all that I'm not. With every part of my being, it belongs in the light. That was the biggest part. And we'll have to do a whole episode on that, because it's not easy. And I know the trigger that just happened for brothers who aren't here yet that have heard that, because I know it. I lived that for years. The idea, the old Jerome, I am unrecognizable to that version, because I was a chronic and master liar. Master. I could never really spoke my truth. I was great at hiding. I was great at putting a mask out. I was great at making you think it was something. It wasn't great at, following the Joneses. All of that stuff I was great at. But what I was never great at was being myself. I didn't even know how to do that. My real self in every space. I'm not talking about just when I got home or just when I'm talking to you, my really close friend, but like being myself in every space that I move in this world, that every piece of the world gets the real me. I wasn't great at that. I didn't know what that was. I was, let me speak. Oh my God, I'm going into this white room. Let me put on my professional face. Or I'm going into this heterosexual room. Let me put on my masculine face. Or I'm going into this religious room. Let me not speak about spirituality at all. Let me keep it in religion. I was always conforming to what was acceptable instead of making the space conform to what my authenticity was. And so that was the big lesson for me, is to being my true self in the world at all times. Like, no fucking secrets. What was it for you?
For me, it was learning how not to rely on anybody else. I remember I must have been 23 or 24. And at the time, I had a mentor that I really respected. And what ended up happening is there was a joke shared that was incredibly offensive and incredibly racist. And when he shared the joke, like 5 minutes afterwards, and this was in front of a large group of people, he came to me and he apologized. And I said, you know, I recognize that you apologize. Thank you. But something just turned off in me. And so I thought about it more and more. And at the time, like, I wanted a sincere apology. Like, that one just felt, yeah. And then there was something that went off of me that said, what if he never apologizes? Do I really want to spend the rest of my life waiting for him to apologize to me? And that was the beginning of it. And then I started to see it in my relationship with my family and in my relationship with my partners, where there were aspects of me that I wanted them to understand because I wanted to feel seen and heard and understood. And I realized, what if that's not their job? And what if they don't have the capacity to do it? And so it really became this process of me learning how to identify what did I need in that particular moment from that person, or what did I want? And then how could I give it to myself, or where did I need to practice giving it to myself? And so it's really been this practice of compassion, forgiveness, and appreciation. And I find myself going through that process multiple times per day. And it's wonderful because it's, you know, I'm filling up my own fuel tank, but at the same time, sometimes it can be incredibly exhausting because I want it to come from somebody else so desperately. Like I want to give my power away to somebody so that I can get my power back from them. When my spirit is like, no, baby, you've had it all the time. You just have to tap into it and reconnect to it. And I think that's really important, not only for the Black gay community as a whole, but for the Black community particularly now. Because yes, it would be nice for reparations to happen and for the white community to apologize, and for things to change. But if it never changes, how do you make peace with that?
Oh, I think you have almost given us our next episode, because I kind of want to, I don't want to, because we can dive all into that for another hour, and I do not want to take that. But like, that beauty of, I think that is a medicine that is unmatched, is when you can learn to be at peace, even if nothing ever changes. And even if they never change, can you still be well? Can you still be happy? Can you still be at peace? And I think that is a huge, because I have a story that I want to share about my relationship with my mother around this very thing. And what it taught me about making peace with what is, so what is can make peace with you. And I think as you sit with that in that beautiful space, this may be a perfect way to say goodbye and end this episode here. And for all of you beautiful souls watching, we hope you got some medicine through this for your own self. And I know there may be many questions you may have as well. Ride with us. We're in this for the long haul. And we'd love to hear from you and what your questions are. You can leave them in a comment under this video, and we'll try to address them in future videos. But until then, know that you're lovable. Know that everything about you deserves and is worthy of being expressed. and that this world is a safe space for your entire truth to live in. I love you deeply. We love you deeply. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.